It encourages me. It is encouraging to me to see people in the Bible that were flawed and had fractured lives, but God used them in spite of their issues. He used them to make an impact on the world. That encourages me because that gives me hope. Because I have flaws. And sometimes my life is all broken up. And it's encouraging to me that God can still use someone that is flawed and fractured to make a difference in the world. That should really be an encouragement to you as well. Because nobody here but us, right? And we all have flaws. And we all have times in our lives when our life is fractured. And we need God to help us overcome. As we look at these individuals in the Bible and their fractured lives and the flaws that they had, we see how God pushed them forward and God helped them to succeed even though they had these obstacles. And the common thing that they had in their lives that pushed them forward was that they believed. Though they were flawed, though they were fractured, at a point in their life, they believed. God, you can still use me. You can still help me to overcome these issues in my life. And it's interesting to me to note that their belief was not in themselves, but it was in God. We have to keep that in reference because, you know, when you start believing in yourself, you'll find, as these examples we're going to study, when you start believing in yourself only, you're going to see that you can really get messed up. In fact, as we look at a couple of examples in the Bible, we're going to see that really what held these people back was themselves. It was the person that they were looking at in the mirror that was holding them back. And so many times, that's just the way it is. We have issues that we don't deal with, and we don't sometimes believe that God can overcome those issues, and we are held back, and we hold ourselves back. And as these Bible characters began to believe in God's ability to help them, in God's ability to strengthen them, to empower them, and to envision them for the future, as they began to believe in God, then we see them move from their flawed condition into a very powerful life. You know, anybody can get stuck in life. You ever been out to the beach or seen somebody at the beach and they think they can pull off the road and get on the shoulder of the road at the beach? We do beach baptisms out there 3 or 4 times a year at the beach, and it never fails. Every time when I'm riding out there, we get out there past Portofino. We get out there past Portofino, and there'll be somebody that didn't realize. A lot of times that it'll say Tennessee on their tag. They didn't realize if you get off that track, off that road there, you just got to get over a little bit, and your wheels are going to start spinning. And you'll be stuck in that sand, and you can try to back up, but you're going to spin this way. And you're just stuck. And somebody's got to come along there and get you unstuck. Well, in life, it's that way also. Sometimes we get off in the sand, we get off the beaten track of where we should be, we're not doing like we ought to do, or the obstacles in life have kind of got the best of us, and we just get stuck. And we need to get unstuck. I would ask you this morning, is there anything in your life that has you stuck? Is there any obstacle? Is there a flaw? Or maybe your life has been fractured by some event in your life, and as a result, you are absolutely right now, you're just stuck and your wheels are spinning. And you just can't go backwards, you can't go forward, you can't get out of the rut, you're just stuck. And you need to get unstuck. Well, I would suggest to you that no matter the obstacles or no matter the flaws, no matter what's causing your wheels to spin, the thing that you need to do is believe. You need to believe. You need to believe that God is able to overcome whatever obstacle, whatever situation, whatever's got you stuck in the sand. You need to believe. That's the starting point. And we learned last week that life change must start with me. But remember this, if I need life change, so do you. Some of y'all looking at me so holy and special and all. I know you ain't perfect. Don't be looking at me like that. You're just like me. Nobody in here but us, right? So we all got issues. So let's just take an ussie of all of us. Here you go. If I had that phone, I'd just take an ussie. And everybody in that ussie's got issues. That's all of us. We're all the same. So we all need to believe. We all need to change. But some people don't understand that in order to change, you got to change. Right? You see, God can change you and God can change me, but there is no way He can change you unless you change. So without change, there's not going to be any change. Are you willing to change? Are you willing to allow God to change you? Well, let me give you two Bible examples that were flawed, that were fractured, that needed God to change them, and it happened. Number one, write it down. One of the most famous people in the Bible, and I say his name, everybody's going to go, oh yeah, I know about him. Moses. How many in here know about Moses? Anybody ever heard of Moses? Yeah. Everybody knows about Moses. Moses. One of the most famous, influential people in all the Bible. Moses was a leader among leaders. I mean, the guy was phenomenal. But it was a process of getting him to that point in his life. We're going to learn a couple of things about how he got to where he was. Write it down. First of all, write it down. We learned that Moses was raised on the right side of the tracks. Now, we've all heard about people that were raised on the wrong side of the tracks. I've had people say to me, preacher, I just came up on the wrong side of the track. You know, I was born on the wrong side of the tracks. My mom and daddy didn't have any money. My mom and daddy didn't put me in the best schools. You know, my daddy told me I was stupid, you know, and I believed him. I messed up when I was a teenager. I was just on the wrong side of the tracks. And as a result of me being raised on the wrong side of the tracks, I didn't really have a chance at life, and I failed because I was raised on the wrong side of the tracks. That is an absolute lie from the evil one, the devil himself. It doesn't matter if you were raised on the wrong side of the tracks. It doesn't matter if your mom and daddy didn't have anything, if you didn't go to the right schools. It doesn't matter if you were raised on the wrong side of the tracks. You need to get rid of that victim mentality. You need to understand that you can become whatever God wants you to become. You are not destined for failure because you were raised on the wrong side of the tracks. Man, I watched the Phil Robertson podcast yesterday. Anybody know about who Phil Robertson is? Duck Dynasty. Phil Robertson. And the name of his podcast is Unashamed. And I watched, once you start watching that, you can't stop. It's addictive. And I started watching these podcasts, and Phil told his story. If anybody was raised on the wrong side of the tracks, it was Phil Robertson. I mean, he said he was raised in the middle of the woods. He said they didn't have indoor plumbing. They didn't have a bathtub. They didn't have any money. He said they had nothing. He was rough. And he grew up, become a drug addict and an alcoholic, and treated his wife like the devil and mistreated his kids. I mean, Phil Robertson was a bad dude from the wrong side of the tracks. But one day he believed, and God changed his life. Well, when you look at Moses, Moses had the opposite experience. Moses was raised on the right side of the tracks. Let's read the scripture where we find out where Moses was raised. Look at Exodus 2, verses 5 through 10. And the daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash herself at the river. Now, Pharaoh is the big dog. I mean, he's the king of Egypt, if you want to put it in those political terms. That's what he was. In fact, the pharaohs in Egypt were worshipped as gods. I mean, he's all powerful in Egypt. All the money in the world. Now follow this story here. The daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash herself at the river, and her maidens came with her. So here's Pharaoh's daughter. She got little servants going with her. And when she gets down to the river, she saw an ark in the bulrushes, in the cattails. Y'all know about cattails? I remember when I used to live in Panama City, I used to go to Lake Seminole fishing. And in the springtime, we would wade the backwaters of Lake Seminole. And I was crazy, absolutely crazy. There were alligators that were laying on the bank. Those alligators could eat me for an hors d'oeuvre, I guarantee you. Just one bite, I was gone. And I used to get down there and walk all back in those backwaters, and I'd see those alligators. I don't know what I was thinking. But the bass would always bed in those bulrushes, in those cattails. But it just so happened that's where those alligators like to lay too also, you know. And I can remember walking along there and seeing all those cattails. I know all about cattails. And here Moses is put in the Bible says an ark. That's a little boat that his mama made. And it was like a little boat, and she pitched it, or she insulated it with this pitch or black tar that kept it, made it waterproof. She put a top over it, and she took Moses, and she put him in this little boat and put him down in the cattails. And the reason she had to do that was because Pharaoh had said that all of the Hebrew children, all the little Hebrew boys, had to be killed, had to be put to death. And Moses' mama didn't want her boy to be killed, so she hid him down at the river's edge. Look at this. And so Pharaoh's daughter comes along. When she saw the ark among the bulrushes, among the cattails, she sent her maid to fetch it. I love that, fetching. When I used to watch the Beverly Hillbillies. Anybody ever watch the Beverly Hillbillies? Granny used to tell Jeffro, go down to the cement pond and fetch me something. Y'all remember that? Some of y'all look at me like, what's he talking about? Well, see, y'all just not educated on good TV. See, good TV is like black and white Andy Griffith. Once it turned color and that Barney was gone and they got that other deputy sheriff, that's not good TV. Are you with me, y'all? Same way with the Beverly Hillbillies, black and white Beverly Hillbillies. That was good TV. And Granny said, go fetch. I mean, go get. And y'all learned a lot of good lessons here this morning. But anyway, and she saw the ark and she sent her maid to go fetch it, go get it. Verse 6. And when she had opened this little boat, she saw this baby boy. And behold, the baby started crying. I went yesterday, Jacob and Mackenzie had their little baby. That's something. It's cool. I went up there to visit him in the hospital yesterday. And they named that boy Nick. Now, Jacob is a Bulldog, Georgia Bulldog fan. I asked him, I said, you name that boy Nick? As in Nick Saban? No, that wasn't that. I ain't why we named him. Too late now. And that little baby, you know, Grandma was holding that baby. It was so awesome. It was so awesome. The little baby's whimpering. He's just so little, just born. You know, sound like a little puppy almost. And Grandma said, isn't he the most beautiful thing you've ever seen? I said, most beautiful baby I've ever seen in my life. I said, I bet he's the smartest too. She said, oh yeah, he's talking to me already. Like 4 hours old. I hear Moses. Wah, wah. And Pharaoh's daughter had compassion on him and said, this is one of the Jewish children, one of the Hebrews' children. See, the Jews were enslaved in Egypt at that time. They were slaves to Pharaoh. And they didn't have any authority. So Pharaoh's daughter said, well, this is one of the Jewish babies. Wow. Well, she could have turned him in. They could have killed the baby. She said, no, I'm not doing that. Then said his sister to Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go and call of thee a nurse of the Hebrew women that she can take care of this baby for you? So Moses' sister is standing there. And so she says, you want me to get somebody to take care of that baby for you? Because you're so young, you probably can't take care of the baby. And so Pharaoh's daughter says, yeah, go find a Hebrew to take care of it. And so she goes and gets Moses' mama. And of course, Pharaoh's daughter had no idea what was going on. And so she ends up paying Moses' mama to take care of her own little baby. That's pretty cool, isn't it? Only God could do that. And Pharaoh's daughter said, go. And the maid went and she called the child's mother. She went and got Moses' mama. And Pharaoh's daughter said unto her, take this child away and nurse it for me, and I'll give you wages. I'll pay you to take care of the little baby. And the woman took the child and she nursed it. Verse 10. And Moses grew, and she brought the child to Pharaoh's house. And Moses became the son of Pharaoh, and actually grandson, and son of his daughter. And she called his name Moses, and she said, because I have drawn him out of the water. So Moses goes to live at Pharaoh's house. He's now living on the right side of the tracks in that culture, because he was going to go to the best schools. He's going to have the finest clothes. I went into one of those sneaker shops the other day. I had no idea. Some of y'all laughing. You know what I'm going to say. I told you, I said, I'm going to go in here and see if I want to buy me some cool sneakers. $350, $400 for these sneakers. I told the guy at the counter, I said, do you realize what y'all are charging for these sneakers? He said, yes, sir. People pay it all the time. I said, people with this color hair don't pay it. Moses is going to have, he's going to have Air Force Ones or whatever cool shoes are. I don't even know what they're cool now, but he's going to have the best shoes. He's going to have the coolest clothes. I mean, he's going to have gold chains around his neck. He's going to the finest Egyptian schools. I mean, he is going to be raised on the right side of the tracks. And you know what's going to happen? Moses is going to begin to believe his own press clippings. Moses, you're the greatest. Yep. Moses, you're the smart. I guarantee you Moses is going to be the quarterback of the football team. I guarantee you. Daddy going to make sure of that. Moses is going to have everything, and Moses is going to start really liking this, that he's living on the right side of the tracks. And Moses is going to develop an entitlement mentality. Not, I was raised on the wrong side of the tracks, I'll never be anything. Oh, I'm living on the right side of the tracks, and everybody needs to bow down to me. Everybody needs to know that I am in control of my life. That was Moses' issue. Raised on the right side of the tracks. You know, you got to be careful. You can be raised on the wrong side of the tracks and mess up and believe you can never become anything. But listen, friend, you can begin to live on the right side of the tracks and think you got it all together and that you're the reason you are where you are and that I am in charge of my own life and I'll just do what I want to do. That's the entitlement mentality. It's wrong to be a victim, but it's wrong to be entitled also. Some people are so entitled, they leave God out of their life. Well, that's what happened to Moses. And then one day he's out. He's older now. And he's out and he's walking. I'm sure his dad had given him some authority to watch the people that were making bricks, because they made bricks and built houses in Egypt. And the Hebrew people, they were the slaves. So they were making these bricks and they were building these houses. And I'm sure that Moses now has begun to kind of see the inequity of what's going on here, and it's not really justice how these people are being treated. He's starting to think a little bit about this and think about his own people, and he's starting to think, wait a second, this means something's not right about this. And he sees a Egyptian and a Hebrew man fighting, arguing. And Moses jumps between them. He grabs the Egyptian by the neck, brings him down, starts pounding him, beats him to death, throws him on the ground, kills him, tries to bury him, tries to hide what he did. He actually killed the man. And after he'd done it, he realized, uh-oh, I done messed up now. And so he runs like a scared rabbit. And he runs to God. He didn't know. He didn't know where he was running, but he runs and he gets out there on the back side of the desert. I mean, he's living in the worst of the worst. He's now living on the other side of the tracks. And when he gets out there, he meets up with a sheep herder, and the sheep herder knows God. He begins to date his daughter, and he ends up marrying her. Now his father-in-law has got this sheep, and he begins to work for him, and God begins to work in Moses' life. And listen to me, God begin to show him, hey, I got a plan for your life. But you gotta give up these flaws that you have. You gotta change this mentality that you have. You gotta humble yourself. Write this down. Moses needed to be humbled by God, and so God used a flaw in his speech. Moses couldn't talk so good. I don't know if he stuttered. I don't know exactly what it was, but look what the Bible says in Exodus 4, verse 10. God's wanting to use Moses, and Moses is saying, I got a problem here, God. I can't talk so good. And Moses said unto the Lord, oh, my Lord, I'm not eloquent. I can't talk well. Neither heretofore nor since thou hast spoken unto thy servant, but I am slow of speech, I am slow of tongue. I don't know if he had a real southern Egypt drawl. Because I have to be real careful when I say stuff, because somebody will go, what did he say? Because I got that South Alabama speech, you know. Woo! And that, I don't know what it was with Moses. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe he stuttered. I don't know, but for whatever it was, he couldn't speak well, and he said to God, I can't ever be anything because I just can't speak in front of people. God said, hang on. You're believing in yourself. You need to start believing in me. I can overcome that flaw in your life. It's so interesting. One of the main things that God told Moses to do was go and talk to people. Go here and talk to this person. Go here and talk to this person. Go stand in front of these people and speak. Moses, he said to Moses, Moses, I want you to go to Pharaoh and stand before his court, and I want you to talk to him. I want you to tell him to let my people go. Moses said, I don't talk so good. You can do it. You know, the fear of talking in front of people is real, isn't it? Anybody when I was a teenager, when I got called into the ministry, I was 16 years old. But I was scared absolutely out of my mind to talk in front of people. And my teacher entered me in a preacher boy contest. Now you say, what is a preacher boy contest? Well, back in the olden days, they used to have these contests in churches where they'd get preacher boys and they'd let them preach a little 10-minute sermon, and then they would critique their sermons, and they would give them trophies, first, second, and third place. And so my teacher entered me in this preacher boy contest, and I said, you out your mind. I can't do it. I can't talk in front of people. Are you called to preach? Yeah, but I ain't preaching. Yes, you are. And so he entered me, and it came time. I didn't have a suit. You had to wear a suit and a tie. Well, my daddy took me down to the store, and he bought me a suit. He bought me a red and white checkered sport coat. Now, we were new at this, y'all. A red and white checkered sport coat. I had a white turtleneck. I was a dude now, I'm telling you, I was a dude. Had a white turtleneck, and I had white pants. See, can't you see it? I look like a Valentine's Day gift. And then he topped it off with platform shoes. He said, man, you're going to stand up here in front of me. You got to be taller. So he put me in platform shoes. So I come strutting in there. And all these other boys, they all know what to do. You know, they know how to dress and everything. They all got on a black coat, you know, with a black tie and a white shirt and black pants and black shoes. And I mean, they're all looking like a preacher, you know, and I come looking at it like I'm from Bourbon Street or something. I don't know. Yeah. And I preached. It was awful. I got third place. He said, wow, that's pretty good. No, there's only 3 preachers. So then they put me in the national preaching contest. Springfield, Missouri. I mean, churches all over the country bringing their preacher boys to preach there. Man, I was quarterback for the football team and the split end on the football team. He was a preacher also. We both went up there to compete. He beat me. By then, I had gotten the right color suit. I had a black suit, you know, a whole deal. But, you know, still, we preached, and he got first, and I got second. And I've never forgiven him for that. I still got his picture on my wall with an X over it. I couldn't get up in front of people. Moses had the same issue. But God said, listen, you need to quit believing in yourself, and you need to believe in me. If you'll believe in me, I'll overcome your speech flaw, and I will use you in a great way. And he did. Everybody remembers this picture. Look at this picture. Moses. Everybody remember that picture? If you saw the 10 Commandments, I know you remember that picture, the movie. That's Moses. He's standing at the Red Sea. He's got 1 million Hebrew people standing behind him. He has been speaking to those people, telling them that if they believed, God was going to perform a miracle for them. And they got to the Red Sea. There's mountains on one side. You can't see it all here, but there's mountains on one side. There's mountains on the other side. There's the Red Sea in front of them. Pharaoh's army's coming up from behind. There's nowhere to go except straight across the Red Sea. If they'd have went into that Red Sea, they'd have all drowned. So what happened? Moses said to God, I don't know what to do except believe. He lifted up his staff. And God said, okay, you believe. And the waters divided. And 1 million Jews walked across on dry land. What happened? Moses went from being fractured and flawed and believing in himself to believing in God. And God did a miracle in his life. Now, let's think about a New Testament example. Anybody in here ever heard of Simon Peter the fisherman? Yeah, y'all know all about Simon Peter. Well, let's talk about Simon Peter. Write this down. Simon Peter started out believing in God, but then he started believing in himself. He went from believing in God to believing in himself. He messed up. Mark chapter 1, verse 16 through 18. You remember the story. He was walking by the sea, or Jesus was walking by the sea, and he saw Simon Peter and his brother Andrew, and they were casting nets because they were fishermen. They were catching fish. Verse 17. Jesus said unto them, come on after me, and I'll make you become fishers of men. You're going to be moved from being catchers of fish to now I'm going to use you to catch people. Wow. That's a big deal. Well, verse 18. And straightway they said yes. What would you have done? I don't know I know what they did. Man, they just said yes. And they believed, and they left their business, they left fishing, and they left their nets, and they just believed, and they followed after him, and everything was awesome. I mean, as they're following after Jesus, they're believing, and God is working in their life, and they're becoming strong followers of Jesus, and Jesus doing miracles in their life, and they're seeing miracles happen, and then all of a sudden, you know what happened? Things changed. And Simon Peter went from believing in God to believing in himself. And when he started believing in himself, he messed up. He began to think that being on the inner circle of Jesus was where it was at and what made him who he was. You know, there was Peter, James, and John, the three that were on the inner circle. Well, Simon Peter thought, look at me. I'm one of the end dudes. I'm one of the three chosen, picked men by Jesus. So it went to his head. And then he said, you know, I'm a pretty strong dude, you know. He's a fisherman, pretty strong. I'd whip anybody. Remember when he was in the garden and he reached in, he pulled out his sword when they came to get Jesus, and he pulled out his sword and he went to cut the guy's head off that was coming after Jesus. He was strong, but he was a bad swordsman. Because he missed the guy's neck and he got the guy's ear. And so he cut the guy's ear off. But I mean, that's a pretty strong dude. You go in there fighting these Roman soldiers with just a sword. I mean, you got to be a pretty strong guy to be a fisherman. When I was in Panama City, when Junior and I were just first getting started in ministry, we didn't have any money. We didn't make any money. And so I used to sell fish door to door. Y'all have heard me tell the stories about selling fish door to door. I literally did. And I used to sell those fish for $0.25 a piece or 3 for $1. It took a while for the first service to catch that. And it's kind of the same way for y'all. I can kind of hear it go. I don't know how many people say, give me $1 worth. And I say, okay, here's your 3. In order to sell fish, you had to catch fish. And so my wife, back in those days, we were so young. My wife, I tell her, she just say, yes, sir, whatever you say, I just do it. Now it's a little different story. But anyway, so we used to go fishing together. And we had a net that's about 150 feet long. And so she would stand right there where the water starts at the shore, and she would hold this gill net. We had a pole, and we'd stick it in the ground, and she would hold on to that gill net. And then I would grab the net, and I would walk out into deep water. I mean, 2.5, 3 feet deep out there. Y'all know, if I got over that, we're in trouble. Somebody gonna drown. So I'd get out there, you know, and I'd start walking, and, you know, 2.5, it'd be up to here, you know. So I'm walking like this, and I'm making this big circle with this gill net, and I'd walk all the way around like this, you know, and I'd come all the way back around, and I'd get all the way around back around here, and come back all the way back around to the shore. And then I would start pulling that net in. That's hard work. Man, you build your arms up pulling them nets in, and I start pulling that net in, and man, mullet be jumping and speckled trout be in there, and you catch an occasional redfish. That was back in the day when you catch anything, you kept everything, you sold everything. I mean, that's the way it was back in the day. And man, I'd pull that net in. I know what it's like. You got to be a strong dude to work those nets. And Simon Peter was a strong, physically strong guy. It got to him. He began to think he was all that. He messed up. He denied the Lord. Write it down. He denied the Lord. In fact, in Matthew 26, verse 69 through 74, look what the Bible says. Now Peter sat without in the palace, and a damsel came unto him, saying, weren't you with Jesus? Oh, verse 70. Yeah. And he denied, no, not me. I wasn't with Jesus. Verse 71. And when he was going out into the porch, another young girl said to him, wait a minute, I saw you. And he said unto them, no, that wasn't me. That was somebody else. I wasn't with Jesus. So he denies Jesus twice. And again, he denied Jesus with an oath. And after a while there came unto him they that stood by and said to Peter, surely you are one of them. I know you're one of them because you talk like them. You talk like a follower of Jesus. Oh, but Simon Peter said, I can't be mistaken as one of them. So what did he do? So he began to curse. I used to say he cussed like a sailor. But that's not fair to sailors. Because we got a lot of Marines can out-cuss sailors. Shoot fire, we got secretaries that can out-cuss sailors. So he was blowing them out, blanking him like this, I don't know the man, blank. I mean, he's cussing because everybody knows that people that cuss like a sailor, that's not Christian. Ooh, got awful quiet in here. When you out there using that filthy language and telling those dirty jokes and talking in the office just like everybody else talks, everybody knows that you're not going to be identified with Jesus. So Simon said, I don't want to be identified with Jesus, so I'm going to talk like people that are not identified with Jesus talk. I'm going to cuss like a secretary. And he did. Wow. He denied the Lord. And look at this. As he's swearing and he's cussing, then immediately he heard that rooster go, cock-a-doodle-doo. It's a pretty weak rooster, but he was a cock-a-doodle-doo. And you remember, he had been told that you're going to deny me 3 times, and you'll hear that rooster and be reminded of what you did, and he did. He denied the Lord. How did he get there? You see, his flaw and his fracture was that he began to think that he could believe in himself, and he quit believing in God. And he failed. But here's the good part. Write this down. Jesus didn't give up on Simon Peter. Aren't you glad about that? The great part about this whole story is he didn't give up on Simon Peter. He gave him another chance. And let me remind you of this. You remember Simon Peter went to the grave and he saw there was nobody in the grave. Jesus was resurrected from the grave. And he thought, wow, it's true. He really is the Son of God. I need to believe in him. But he didn't immediately believe. He went back to fishing. And Jesus, hear this now, don't miss this. Jesus gathered up some of the disciples, and he said to them, I want you to go back and tell the other disciples you have seen me and that I'm alive. And then he said this, be sure to tell Simon Peter. He singled him out. Isn't that awesome? Here was a guy that had denied the Lord 3 times, but Jesus said, I'm going to give him another chance. And the good part about that, the great part about that is you may have denied the Lord. You may have not stood up for him when you should have. You may have said things you shouldn't have said. But listen, you may have done things you shouldn't have done. But Jesus says, I'm going to give you another chance. Believe. And what did Simon do? He believed. Where do we see him next? He's preaching the sermon on the day of Pentecost. 3,000 people get saved. Then 5,000 people get saved. And the church begins to go like wildfire, spreading the gospel throughout the known world. It all started with a man that had denied Jesus, a man that was flawed and fractured in his life. But he came to a point of saying, Jesus, I was wrong. I believe. Give me another chance. Jesus gave him another chance, and he became a great preacher for God. And I'm saying to you, you may have messed up. You may be flawed. You may have been fractured. Your life may be all messed up. You may have even denied the Lord. But it's time to believe. Turn to God and say, I believe. I believe you as my Savior. I believe that you got a purpose for my life, a plan for my life. God, I give my life to you. I believe. And if you will, God give you another chance. He gave Moses another chance. He gave Simon Peter another chance. He gave me another chance. He'll give you another chance. You gotta believe.